Okay. Hey there. Time is 6:32. I'm going to call the meeting of the Newcastle Planning Board today, Thursday, March 16th, 2023 to order. And the second thing on the agenda is the review of the minutes. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to back up just a little bit and I'm going to say, welcome, Michael. And how do you say your last name again?
Martone.
Martone. Who is our new acting planner?
Yes.
Acting planner.
That's
your official title. Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you for being here. Stepping into Isabel's shoes and appreciate it. So review of minutes from the February 16th meeting. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at those? And do we have a motion to accept the minutes? We have a second? Were you not here? You were not here. You were not here. I will second that since we were the only two here. All right. So for the two of us that were here, is there any comments or anything you saw that needed to be changed? Thought about it? It all looked pretty good to me. All right. So of those of us that were here, all in favor of passing the minutes. 2-0 with 2 abstaining. So next on the agenda is our one and only pre-application for LCTV located at 29 Sheepsgate Road. You guys want to come on up? So I'm just going to give a quick
hot seat.
Tonight. I'm going to quick rundown about the process for tonight, because we are not reviewing a formal application. We're just having in the core zoning call, it's called a pre-submittal meeting. It's an opportunity for applicants and the planning board and the planner to look at a project sort of from a high level, brainstorm, come up with things that might need to be addressed at the time of the actual application is made. And sort of set you on the path to work with the town planner so that when you bring the application forward, T's are crossed, I's are dotted, everyone's happy, and it should make for a nice smooth sailing for the application review. So nothing we say here tonight will or can or should be construed as actual reviewing or permitting. There's no authorization of anything, so no voting. Just so we're up there. So tell us a little bit about what you want to do. Start there.
Perfect.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Met with Isabel, roughly a while ago, and just wanted to know briefly the process in submitting an application for you guys to take a look at so that we can get feedback on a parking lot expansion. Quite frankly, LCTV, as you may or may not know, serves all the Midcoast nonprofit organized over on Sheepsgate Road. And we have one sole building, and in that building contains all of our admin and all of our production facilities to do everything that we do that we broadcast live. As our scope and as our operation has expanded over the past couple of years, primarily as a result of some change in direction of leadership, we found ourselves in a little bit of a space crunch to the point where we're trying to explore different avenues for grants and alternative funding to give us a little more floor space in the future. As a kind of precursor to that, set us up for that type of application and potential funding source, we were trying to do a couple of these things ahead of time so that it looked better on our grant applications to say we're kind of shovel ready or in that process of being. The first step in that is clearing some trees and expanding out back. When we have our board meetings and when Larry has folks come in to do production type activities, we have very limited parking out back and it gets very, very tight. So our first step was to ask permission to remove some few trees and expand that back parking area. I was unsure about how to go about that process, so I asked Isabel, and Isabel said, just follow this. And although it probably be very painless, just talking amongst friends, she didn't see that there would be any huge roadblock with it. This way, at least everybody knows about it. It's a public process, and there's no hiding or anything. Not that we're trying to hide something, but we didn't want to seek permission afterwards, I guess. So what you have before you is just a brief layout real quick. It's not overly detailed because to be honest with you, we don't have a lot of details involved in it with the exception of we're just primarily looking to expand back approximately, 50, 60-ish feet and widen out our existing width that's there. It's just forested right now, so we would be looking to just cut the trees, remove the stumps and put some ground. If there's any preliminary site work, for example, if we wanted to put a conduit for future use in so that we had option for power, we might bury the conduit or something, but there's no building or anything planned at this point in time. It's just a precursor step to in the future if we're lucky to secure a free building if anybody wants to give one away. That's really pretty much it. Out front, we have a couple of trees that are endangering the building, quite frankly, causing some maintenance issues with the roof, and we just don't have the ability to remove them. So I wrapped them into this project just to take them all at once when the tree guy was in doing that type of work. So that's really the scope of it. It's pretty benign, open to any feedback, comments, questions. We're not looking to be thorn on anybody's side. We're not here to ruffle feathers. We're just trying to get a little bit bigger parking area in hopes that we can hopefully someday maybe have some admin offices or production place that we can have dedicated solely.
And we've got several trees in the back there. One giant pine. If the wind blows the wrong way, because we'll need a whole new building because it will be gone.
Yeah.
So that one is, if nothing else happens, that tree absolutely has to come down.
Mhm.
And to take that down, probably you'd have to take a few other trees around it. So you'd have some place to take it down too. So,
Just big softwood, yeah.
yeah, it's softwood. So, yeah. So, yeah, the set covered pretty good, but that big old pine is, is a rascal that definitely has to come down in the very near future.
Thank you.
Do you guys know the site? Any questions about the site or no? Ideas? Well, you know it intimately.
My backyard.
You want a pine tree?
Technically my side yard. Your backyard backs up to my side yard, although I don't actually think the lots touch.
They don't touch.
They don't quite touch.
No.
It's one removed.
The Chapman property is in between.
Right.
Any
Um,
obstacles that you guys see that, any guidance on things that you could see that is like, whoa, this is definitely not going to work or
So what I thought we'd do, unless anyone has any questions first, is just kind of like step through the code a little bit.
Okay.
And go over some points just to keep in mind or pay attention to when you're doing the application, and just have a conversation as we I kind of went through and looked at in site standards. We're really looking, I think, at just two things. We're looking at driveways and vehicular parking. As I understand it, from the sketch you had done, the overlay, what you're kind of talking about doing is the driveway kind of comes in. There's a couple parking spots kind of in front of the building now.
Correct.
You want to extend the driveway past the left side of the building
yes.
and put a parking area behind the building.
There is one there now, Ben, a small part. There is a driveway goes beside the building and
Beside the building.
there is a little bit of parking.
Oh, there
in
is.
back that you
Very
can put about 4 cars, 5 if you really jam them in there.
Got
And that's the part that we want to expand in the back part,
Got it.
as well as those few trees in the front to make it, well, like Seth said, we got some issues with maintenance there with those old oaks that are sitting there.
Yep.
So if we can clear some of those oaks out, make a couple of spots in front and then bring it out back and expand that, push it back into the woods. That would go
That would be
along.
better.
That'd be a lot better.
So there's a couple interesting things here. So in driveways, I'm just gonna go down and read.
And we don't really need a driveway. The driveway is there.
Oh, yeah, I know. But when we're talking about things like setbacks and whatnot, and encroachments, one of the interesting things, even though the driveway is there, you're gonna be expanding the driveway, extending it to create more access to the back parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, yes,
So
the
it's not-
parking lot would really be extended.
The
yes.
parking lot would be extended,
Sure,
but I mean, the driveway itself, and I don't know how close to the left lot line
Oh,
that is. What's that, the north lot line?
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
it's
a-
probably 10 or 15 feet
Yeah.
from the stone wall.
So interestingly, right? Driveways, and this is in driveways is in site standards, item 2, C. And I'm looking at item 5. Driveways may pass through required front, side, and rear setbacks to access permitted parking locations. So that's important, only in that if in normally you wouldn't be able to have the driveway that close.
Encroaches on that side.
Exactly.
But if it going
But if
back,
it's to access a parking area in a permitted parking location like the back,
you're not.
then you're allowed to.
Yeah.
So kudos. I think the plan you come up with so far is great. I mean, that's exactly what we were hoping and intended when this was written. And then over in vehicular parking, which is long, and it's a page and a half of stuff. The most important thing probably is the applicability. So it'd be 3B 1A says that parking lot standards apply to new parking lot construction, including expansion of existing parking lot by 10 or more spaces. So my first question is, how many spaces are you thinking about having?
Well, as many as we can get. I mean,
We're not putting a Hannaford's parking lot up.
No,
there,
right,
but-
exactly.
But yeah, like Seth says, as many as we can get with what money we've got to go back.
But you think you're gonna do more than 10?
well, across the back lot line, if we lined everybody up, we might get 10 cars, side
Yeah,
that way.
I don't-
It would be real,
be-
that would be very, very tight.
Yeah, if you just let people randomly park, I don't think you'd get 10, but if you went out there and,
You put lines on.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
you
maybe
probably
get
maybe have 10.
So, this is one of those kind of things where traditionally, when the planning board has reviewed parking lots and parking lot standards, there's always been it's not written in the code, but it's been requested by the planning board that an actual design showing where the parking spaces are going to be is filed with the application.
Okay.
Well, I won't even go into the reasons. That's just something that has always been done in Newcastle.
No problem.
And, oh, shoot, I just turned off the computer.
I can overlay that on that Google Earth and get you, I mean, it doesn't have to be PE stamped, correct?
No.
Okay.
No, it
So-
just has to be relatively accurate.
A little more formal, so I can
Yep.
show side setbacks.
Yep.
And I can show approximate depth.
Yep.
Off the rear property line, and that
Yep.
can give us an approximate, if I used 10, feet per spot.
10 feet per spot.
I can get you pretty close.
Exactly.
Okay. no
Yeah.
problem.
And that's that's really more for like the historical aspect of this.
Yeah.
So that when we file that with the application, it goes through the permitting process. You do more of a project later on, you want to expand that parking lot, we can say, oh, okay, you're already permitted for this number of spots. Now you're going to be adding this many spots. Does it comply with these standards? Does
Okay.
that make sense?
No problem.
It's just for that. So including that design would be great. And then moving down, so if we're gonna hit 10 or more spaces, that means that we're kind of falling into like more standards that need to be applied to the parking lot. And this is town-wide standards.
Yep.
So I would pay attention to the parking location, parking lot. Let's see. Okay, parking lot. I didn't highlight this, I'm sorry. So I read it through and I was like, oh, this, and this. This would be able to be done without a special permit. The lot in question is in the highway commercial district. So it's totally allowed. The one thing that I would say is that the code really does want to only permit expansion or creation of new parking lots to the side or the rear of buildings
You're not looking.
and not to the front.
Yep.
It tries to discourage that. So if you've got parking in the front in a commercial setting, in a non-residential setting, so it's allowed in like single unit residence, right? You can park in the front like your house.
Yep.
In any commercial type building, if you've already got parking there, you don't have to get rid of it. Like that's allowed. You can keep that and you can maintain that forever. But expansion of that would be creating more of a non-conformity. So that's sort of discouraged. So in terms of like taking the trees down in front, if they're a hazard or a danger, there's no permitting process involved for taking trees down.
So can I ask you a real dumb technical question?
No such thing as a
And
dump.
I'm really not trying to split hairs.
Yeah, yeah.
What is the definition of expansion of a parking spot?
I'm glad you asked. So, in here. Sorry, it actually talks about in the code.
And my rationale for the question isn't to be difficult. It's if the tree occupies a certain percentage of the existing parking spot that we're using. And said tree is removed, is it considered expansion of the park?
No.
Okay,
No, it's not.
so that's all we're trying to do.
Yeah. exactly. If you were gonna try and like add, 2 or 3 more parking spots there in the front.
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't fly.
So we have like, I'll say 1 3/4-ish spots where they just simply slide to the side of the driveway where kind of staff parks. And we have a couple of nice parking bollards in the shape of oak trees.
Yeah.
That are kind of there. So if those weren't there, the people could actually set to the side. It
Yeah.
just gives us more of a, that existing area is paved. It just happens to be paved around the parking bollards type of thing.
No,
So-
that would be considered maintenance of an existing park.
Okay, that's what we're really trying to
Absolutely.
do, is just trying to secure those spots over there.
Yeah, yeah. That's not a problem. And I can't find it. No.
So technically it's an expansion, but not really.
Well, no, because there's a parking spot there.
It is.
There is a park.
And the tree has grown up through it.
It is.
Just due to, lack of maintenance of pruning the tree.
Yes. Pretty
That's that you're covered for.
much. Okay.
That's not a problem. It's not even a question. But creation of a new parking lot, there are standards, and under the vehicular parking section, item H, design, there are some things in there just to pay attention to. If you're thinking about going over those 10 spaces,
Okay.
10 spaces or more.
Okay.
So 9 or less, don't have to follow this.
It'll be 9 or less.
10 or more, you got it.
Make those lines really wide.
Yeah.
Really wide.
Make so somebody get a truck.
So, for 10 or more, you do need to think about having a minimum number of shade trees around the parking lot. No single parking spot can be more than 40 feet from a shade tree. And then it talks about if you're going to put in you guys are just making a square,
That's it.
basically parking
That's it.
lot.
That's all.
But if you wanted to put in at Lincoln Academy, right, where they've got what are the islands or what are those called?
Isthmuses and peninsulas.
Peninsulas, and things like that, right? Then there's standards for how you do all that stuff.
Yeah,
Ma'am-
medians in between. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right,
Room.
right.
No, we're really not trying to get that fancy, to be honest. It won't be we're not looking to pave it. It's just gonna be a small gravel. And to be quite frank, when we plow out back, we have a small little shed that just stores extra storage and stuff. And when we plow it back on a typical winter, not so much right now, although the last couple of weeks have been busy. That doesn't take much to build that out, and then we really cramp. There's nothing. So this extra space primarily just be to push the snow back and then still allow people to park and have some reasonable space out there.
Yeah, I remember we had big, heavy snow and you guys lost a whole bunch of parking
No, it's
a couple of years ago, right?
not a lot of room out
Not a
there.
lot of room. Yeah. So, what else? did I see? Does anyone else have anything they noticed about parking standards that we should just talk about or discuss? I think we've hit the big ones. The only other concern that I had was to the north is whose property?
The lady, I
Sure.
think passed, it was an older lady that lived there. I think she passed, and whoever's in there now are the younger people. I don't really know, Ben, who owns that property.
It's just that since it's a residential house that abuts that commercial property, and of course the driveway is going to be on that side.
Yeah.
We want to probably just make sure we leave as much of the natural screening
Oh, yeah.
as
Oh, and that's-
possible.
yeah,
along
we
that,
don't plan to touch any of
and then
these.
put that driveway extension, parking lot extension away from the,
And she's got a
Lot.
bunch of trees on her side of that stone wall too, that she's left for a buffer, they left for a buffer, so.
yeah. Exactly.
There's a little bit of growth there.
That should just be maintained. There are standards under natural screening for how to do that. But I think if you're planning to just, like I said, you already have that, you're just extending the driveway,
Exactly.
creating a parking spot, so you're not increasing the nonconformity, as long as you don't clear cut those trees right up to the property line, I think.
Right.
I think you'd be good to go. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And other than that, the only other thing I think I wanted to talk about was future. Because this is like, you're thinking this is like phase one of X,
Yeah,
right? And at some point, we're talking about either expanding the building that's there or having another building on site,
correct.
but we don't know where necessarily.
Well, yeah, I think where would be connected to the back rear corner of this existing building would make the most sense. Unless you tore the existing building down and went back on the lot, because it goes 2.5 acres back there.
Right.
And just went back in the woods there and did the groundwork and then left all out front for parking, which if you had a lot of money to do that, that would be great, but I don't see that happen.
So in terms of like phase one, phase two, it's just that you're gonna create a parking lot that you may then eat some of with a building.
Correct.
And then expand the parking lot again further to the rear.
Correct.
So again, that all just sort of like the thinking of it, yeah, you don't have the money to do it all right now, that's fine, but planning for it so that we know that whatever we do in phase two isn't going to increase any nonconformity that we may have,
Correct.
you know what I mean?
Yes,
Mhm.
So it's just
exact.
planning it ahead so that we know that makes sense. We don't-
Convention. With the code, the use. I wasn't entirely sure how to characterize it, so I thought maybe it could possibly come back or.
No, I thought maybe it best fit under office. Great question. But I love it. I was not sure.
Yeah, I mean, for what we've got now, yeah, that's probably the best fit,
Closest
although
thing.
it's probably the closest fit. Let me go read the definition real quick. I mean, not that it necessarily matters. Those are all permitted in that district. And we're not talking about changing the use at all. So maybe we don't even have to talk about it. I think it is interesting. But we don't have a whole lot of the like similar type uses in town. How would you even classify that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of made sense as off. I mean, is it mostly? You're not manufacturing it, really. It's
No,
cameras, and I imagine there are offices.
yeah, offices and studio, small studio. It's all camera work and computers,
Right.
small bathroom.
Yeah, that is probably the best fit. I mean, some argument could be made that it's sort of a public service, right? Because it is.
I mean, to a
It
certain
is.
degree, yeah.
Yeah.
Doing it right now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing it right now.
We're doing it right now.
So
And we do it for every town in the county, just about now.
yeah, really.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I did you have a specific concern about the
No,
use?
I just figured, if there's gonna be standards or anything, if they're coming back, just to
Look at those.
kind of, figure out which,
Yeah.
what makes, I mean, the board, I guess, would decide kind of, yes, this fits, but imagine there's some standards that are gonna be relevant depending on the use. So,
I mean, utilities and services.
That's the
Yeah.
only other one I was looking at too, yeah. Small office, which is probably what you have here. Or medium office. Service uses, yeah, may include single mobile. Yeah. So that is interesting. Multiple companies.
There wasn't anything like, you know, oh, this clearly fits
It
here.
really doesn't. There really isn't.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it should be a big issue because I think it could fit pretty comfortably under office, but I just figured
Yeah,
Right.
the standards for offices do have, because we sort them by small, medium, and large, and they do have standard parking standards attached to them.
As far as the number of spots.
Yeah, exactly, right. The utilities and services. Although this is an interesting fit too. Buildings and structures that provide or facilitate the transmission of services consumed by the public.
Which one's the easiest?
That's
Good question.
that's a good
Seth, I
question.
like your
I
thinking.
love it. Cut right to the chase. Honestly, it could fall into this one too, right? Cultural facility. That's an interesting one. Let's just go look and make sure. I mean, this is why we should have these conversations before we do the application. Cultural facility. Open to the public. Okay, a facility open to the public for cultural services, exhibitions, including without limited to museums, cultural centers, historical societies, libraries operated by a government or nonprofit establishment. Cultural facility may include ancillary assembly, retail, office, or restaurant uses, which require separate use permits. Interesting. I don't know. I actually kind of, I'm kind of coming back to the utilities and services.
I looked at that one too, and then I'm noticing it does include internet, which I imagine is fairly similar to.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine this was probably contemplating data center or something.
Yeah. Yeah,
The transmission of services.
that is actually what happens. What's interesting about that is that, okay, so in the standards for utilities and services, there are no standards attached that relate to parking.
Perfect.
But there are
We'll get you.
standards. We'll take that one. So,
The change on that.
but there are standards attached to it regarding buildings, permanent building within the district in which the utility equipment cannot be located indoors, must utilize screening elements and walls to blend in the surrounding context. That's not what we're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. This one also does have the only other thing I'd say about the utilities and services use is that, which is probably the best fit in my mind, just because it is, and it specifically says facilitate the transmission of services consumed by the public.
All we do.
That is
That's
what
pretty
you
much
do.
it. That
That's
is-
exactly what we do.
So I'm keen to say that's probably most likely. But it does say that attached to it, the last item is that the proposed use shall comply with the nuisance standards in Article 6, Section 1G. And that just relates to well, everything basically. Noise, smoke, blah, 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 that can be detected from nearby lots. The only way that may pertain to your specific situation is if the parking lot grows to a point where we really need exterior lights at night, for example. Are we going to illuminate it?
Oh, I see what you get.
Then we're adjacent to a residential property.
Some screening.
So like there's screening concerns, there's lighting concerns, and how that lighting, that's all detailed in the parking lot as well, how you get to, all about this. It's- Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So it's just something to keep in mind. If lighting becomes the thing that needs to be in the parking lot, it has to comply with those nuisances and the lighting standards.
Yep, that makes sense. Well, we would address that, I would assume, at a later point when the building application would come before you.
Yep.
And place the structure.
Yep.
So another point of request or begging, I should say, is would there be any way that the town would consider to waive the fee for the nonprofit for said community service building?
So what we can do, the planning board does not have the authority over how fees are assessed. That is the purview of the select. board.
Okay.
But what we can do, because you are a nonprofit, is if someone here wants to make a motion, we can move that, talk about recommending that we waive the fee. Then it would go to the select board and they would be the ones that actually vote on.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, we could.
Yeah.
I'd make that motion.
Yeah, I think given the public service that we're providing. Yes. Application. You're asking.
We appreciate it, sure. This is shoestring budget, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't speak for the select board, but that's the only path forward that we have. So we can kick it to them.
Or, I mean, we could request for 100% of the franchise fee to come back to the station. We could pay your.
You could do that.
Also beyond the purview of the planning board. I'm just saying.
Hypothetically, well, while you're asking, why don't you?
Hypothetically, quicksand, trap.
I'm just, you said he wasn't gonna be interesting. You said it
Huh?
was boring. And I'm trying my hardest, Ben, to not.
We
make
try
it
to have
boring.
fun. We try to. No, I think we've actually covered all the bases. Does anyone else have any concerns or thoughts or things that we need to think about in terms of?
What's the next process? Do we file another application to you?
Yes, file an application, work with Michael.
Yeah.
Include that diagram we talked about.
Yeah.
And make special note about the work you want to do in the front, how it's not increasing the parking, that it's
Yep.
just routine maintenance.
Yeah, I can put some caption bubbles in there and just
Perfect.
call out those specific
Yep.
spots.
So pictures or anything would always be helpful. Pictures are always.
Worth
always-
1,000
always
words.
helpful,
Yep.
always helpful. And then just, another application from it. File it with, Michael will get the ball rolling.
Yeah, we'll work with you to make sure we get everything in there, so
No problem.
it's all complete and comes back.
We appreciate that very much.
Cool. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, man.
It's exciting.
Have a great
Have a good one. All right, so my computer has died and I don't have a copy of the agenda. Was there anything else on there that we need to
No.
talk about?
Blank spaces. after
Blank
that.
spaces?
Public comment.
Oh, thank you. All right. All right, yes, all right. So item 4. Public comment. Do we have? You do? All right, come on up. Tell us who you are and please speak directly into the microphone.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for hearing me out. My name is Ben Shepherd. My family and I just moved here to Maine. We're actually living in a family home down in Booth Bay Harbor. I've been coming here since I was an infant. We have family up there, and as soon as my job went remote, I said, "Hey, how soon can I be a Maine resident?" So, really excited to be here. And we bought back in November a piece of land just down on Pleasant Street here. Worked at the time with George Chase to make sure that the house that we wanted to build would fit, would be approved, was in keeping with the neighborhood. So did a lot of work with him. Obviously didn't apply for a building permit application. This was all before we bought the land, right? So we just wanted to make sure, hey, before we buy this, could my family and I build, the house we want? George was great. He took a look, asked us a few questions and said, yeah, this is going to work with the character of the neighborhood. Here's one strange thing about the lot though, which I think some of you may be aware of. There was a very old, back in the 40s, proposed street that would run along the side of that lot. And it's labeled on an old survey that I was operating off of as C Street. And right now, my understanding is there's some question as to whether the house that we are choosing to build would be encumbered in any way by that old paper road, I suppose it's called, of C Street. So just this week, I got news from George Chase that he may be asking for planning board feedback on whether C Street is an issue that needs to be resolved before the permit application is going into that. I was under the expectation, the assumption that the approval would all happen at the code enforcement officer level. So this is the first that I heard that, hey, the planning board might be part of me getting a house. So I'm here just to make connections, put faces to names, ask what I can do obviously to make this as straightforward and streamlined as possible. We are eager to start working, eager to be Newcastle residents. We got 2 kids at Lincoln Academy, eager to be tuition free at Lincoln Academy because we're coming from Booth Bay Harbor now and we're paying tuition for them to go there. But in any case, just figured I'd show up for public comment. I only heard about this a few days ago, so I know we couldn't get it on the agenda, which is totally fine. But figured it wouldn't hurt for me to come in and say my piece.
That's
So,
great. Thank you very much.
sure.
So do you have you submitted a complete application at this point or not?
I have to George Chase,
Okay.
only the code enforcement officer.
And okay. We should check with him. I don't know if but you have
I-
something you wanna?
Well, yeah. So just for, I guess, everybody's benefit, we had spoken before. I've spoken with George and I think. So I don't have a complete application to put before the planning board yet. I don't know, maybe George has everything he needs, but
Okay.
if he wants to kick it to the planning board, which he's definitely allowed to do, we'll just make sure that we've got a complete application and we have all of the paperwork and everything so you have all the information. I think I've also spoken with Peter Drum about the C Street, whether or not it exists or doesn't exist. The issue is kind of, not to get too far into it, it's like, does it exist? To build the house, you have to kind of like prove that this thing doesn't exist, which is kind of, people usually don't document things that don't exist. So it's kind of not, there wouldn't be a piece of paper saying street doesn't. So that's where, we brought the attorney in.
So as I understand it, C Street, which doesn't exist currently, but is referenced on the deed,
There's a map,
there's a
That-
map.
which I don't know why it's shown on there.
Yep.
I'm sure a surveyor probably saw this,
Right.
included it. So I don't believe it's on the deed.
So it is not on the deed. It's not on my title. I feel I might have brought all of this on us by using an old survey from before I bought the land, simply to sketch out how the house would sit on the land.
Ah.
I actually have a copy of that if it matters to see it, but that old survey is the only image of a survey that I had. Right. So to give George the permit application and say, okay, well, here's how my house is going to sit. It references C Street, but it's a very outdated survey. My deed and my title does not reference C Street.
Hmm.
And actually, before buying the land, because I was looking at this old survey, what's this C Street here before I bought it? So Peter Drum is the one who helped, along with the title company, to make absolutely certain that C Street was no longer valid. So again, not to get into a lot of the particulars, but C Street was first, I guess, proposed in 1947. Maine legislature in 1987 said, look, if there's any of these paper roads out there that no one ever built, but someone thought about, it's driving landowners nuts. So in 1987, the Maine state legislature said, any of them out there, if no one acted on it in 20 years, it does not exist. And the landowner has all of the rights to that land, regardless of the form of proposal. So that's what I learned about Maine law before buying the lot. So I guess the thing that I don't say surprised me, but I wasn't prepared for now that being an issue at this stage in the building permit process. Not that it matters for your review, but my contractors like lined up the excavation and the foundation guys for just as soon as the roads come unposted, all based on some previous conversations that, hey, this thing is in the CEO's hands and everything is all ready to go.
But George has not issued you a permit.
He has not.
Okay.
He has not. Nope. He only issued and I don't, if there's anything to it. He issued me guidance before purchasing the land that this is going to be fine. He had a copy of the plans at the time. And then I issued permit application back in late February, to which he said, I think I might need to kick this to the planning board because I don't know what this C Street thing is. So my goal is, if that's really the only issue, and C Street is very thoroughly provably not an issue because of the main legislature, it saves me time if we can stick at the CEO level and assuage his concerns and say, yeah, yeah, we're fine. If the planning board needs to see it, of course, the planning board needs to see it. So then my goal is, how can I get you guys everything you need so that we can make it?
Sure. So as you know, we had a planner. This is literally Michael's first meeting
Yes.
with us as our new
Hey.
acting planner.
My first.
So we've been in flux a couple of times now, I think, since you started the process. So
Okay.
I apologize for that, but sometimes that's the way town government works. Best thing to do is to work with Mike on making sure that the application is complete in all aspects, and then the determination from the CEO, he will provide us in writing whether or not he wants the planning board to review it, or if he thinks he can. So
Okay.
best thing I can tell you to do, work with the planner.
Okay,
That's why we have them.
perfect. Michael, I can send you everything that I've sent into George. If that's a good starting place, I have the application all done along with sketches and everything. But if there's anything else that you would need, then I'm happy to provide it.
That's a good place to start, probably. Since obviously we had a conversation today and I spoke with Peter from today. A lot of this is new, so I think, I don't know exactly what George has, and I can talk to him as well. And-
Yep.
But I think, yeah, there's nothing, it doesn't hurt to just send me whatever you got, and I'll see what I can do. We'll talk to George about what his plan is, what an action is.
Okay.
Go from there.
Yeah, obviously we can't make any determinations of.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So if George does decide, it sounds like it's George's decision of whether he wants to get the planning.
It's
The
always the
board's involved.
CEO's prerogative whether
Okay.
or not he wants an application reviewed. But
And if he does want that application to be reviewed by the planning board, that would happen in the next meeting.
Correct.
Which is in April.
Correct.
If that were to happen, and hypothetical, by working with Michael.
Yep.
Would the goal be that in that meeting in April, approved, good to go, shovels can hit dirt?
that is the goal, always the goal.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
you have to go to building permits.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the process would go like this. If the CEO determines the planning board needs to review it, you're working with the planner to have a complete application. It goes onto the agenda for the planning board. Notice would need to be provided to abutters that there's going to be a public hearing about the project at the next meeting of the planning board in April. And Michael can walk you through what
Mhm.
that involves. It's just mailing letters.
Okay.
And then we'd meet in April, we'd review the application. Michael would have already determined that it was complete before he even got to us. And so the idea would be that, yeah, everything hopefully would work out. I can't prejudge anything,
Of
but
course.
ideally, if it is permitted at that point, the planning board would vote to authorize the CEO to issue the building permit.
Okay.
Then you get a building permit from the CEO.
Okay.
But we don't issue permits. We issue approvals.
Approvals to the CEO to issue a permit.
We issue approvals of applications. The CEO issues permits.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
It's not a long process after you. get the
So
approval for the-
hopefully what would happen is George knows this already and he would be waiting for you guys to do this.
Oh,
permit
yeah.
Very shortly thereafter.
Right, or usually it's, a couple of days at most after the approval at the planning board that.
Okay.
The CEO issues a permit.
Yeah, there's no public hearing or, agenda notice and things like that.
Okay.
need to happen for building.
No.
And so my questions of, how and whether we can keep this at the CEO level, just for time purposes. Those really need to be directed from me to George. Or not. Is it really up to George and he
It's
has
up
the
to him.
information that he needs to have?
He needs that complete review. He needs a complete application.
So he has that. It's oftentimes the case that the CEO will just review it and there is no planning board for just a single family home on a lot, right? Or is it always the case that the planning board reviews any new home?
It varies.
In the code, it at least identifies the permitting authority, whether it's planning board, CEO. I think that's basically it.
Yeah, basically anytime the CEO thinks for whatever reason, and it doesn't actually, the code is not specific, so it doesn't say why, it doesn't need to be a reason, just if the CEO identifies anything requires planning board, process, he just forwards it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And that's for any type of application, not just houses or
Sure.
anything. Could be a fence. Right.
That's helpful. Michael, I'll
Good.
work with you and send you what I've sent to George and going on.
Did you have something you wanted to say? You were looking like.
Yeah, I guess I just, know if you could give some information on this as the town planner, I'm sure it would
Right.
also for you be helpful. If this is a road that was never constructed and was never documented, I mean, do we have any reference to this in the code, what to do in a situation like this? I know there's this, but I mean, it's just something where you and George just see this and say it's not a road, it's no issue, or does it involve more like work on your end? I guess I'm just confused if it's never built,
Right.
wasn't a record of it. Seemed to be pretty clear. At least. Maybe I'm not understanding.
No, that
Okay.
is exactly, that's the issue is, so it was documented, right? And there's like paper that shows a road. It shows up on, I guess, surveys from, almost 100 years ago. But that creates this kind of weird, it's a paper street. So originally there was supposed to be like lots of small lots there, and there were roads that were laid out on paper. Someone drew it and said, yeah, we want to do this. And the town said, yeah, go ahead, you can do that. And then the development never really happened. And the road on paper exists, like kind of legally. If someone wanted to build it, they could have, no one ever did. And so now it creates problems for someone who wants to develop on that property or, access, like, can we do this? And so the issue is not so much like, was there a road? It's, at least as far as I understand it, it's, does like a neighbor have, it's almost like an easement. Does a neighbor have the right to use this easement to get to their property? And there is, it's not that there's no neighbors, it's that like, it was never really clarified. It never really hit the ground. And so now the problem that I think that George ran into and that I was also running into, and that I want to make sure is clear if it comes to the planning board is what's the reality? What are the facts here? Because, the code sets out regulations and standards, and the idea is that planning board or the CEO, whoever is going to issue a permit, has to be able to say, yes, this requirement is met, the standard is met. And this is like this weird gray area. Like, is this a standard that's met? Like, can whoever's issuing a permit say, yes, you can build there? Like, does the applicant have the right to build there? If someone else it's an easement, someone else has the right to use it, then like, no, you can't. So that's it. It is really just to clarify and say, can you make this informed decision of like, yes, we can allow you to build there. No, we can't allow you to build there because someone else has the right to drive there.
And
so
in this
that's-
particular case, it would be a public right of way.
Yeah, or that's what so, I don't know, how does this work? And so that's why,
Right.
that's why you call an attorney.
Well, it's a good question too, because you got to be really careful with those public right of ways. Because they're public.
Right.
So, yeah, so you want to make sure that there is no actual right of way. No real right.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about deed law is that, and this sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. Anything can be written in a deed. Doesn't make it legal. Which is weird. But when you think about it, things like this happen all the time. My own deed for my house, which is only like, 10 years old, references the old oak tree. Well, that old oak tree ain't there anymore. It hasn't been there for a long time. So how can you prove exactly where it was? It's hard. So yeah, that's a minor thing, but it's,
And so, and it should be the kind of thing where we can get the information. Normally, if someone comes and says, I own this piece of property, can I build a house on it? And you're like, can you prove that you own this property? And they say, here's the deed. But can you prove that no one else owns the, it's not even the property, it's like the right to access this? You know, it's, you know, you're trying to prove a negative, and that's hard. And so that's where I felt like an attorney needed to weigh in on it and say, yeah, this is a big enough problem that the legislature, the state legislature weighed in on it and made rulings and all of that. So,
Well, and I agree. And that's exactly why I got an attorney involved before even purchasing the land, was to prevent exactly this kind of situation where there was any ambiguity as to whether I could build on the land. So I guess where I'm coming from is it was unclear to me before I bought the land. It became crystal clear to me after Peter Drum reviewed the survey, reviewed the main law about the matter, reviewed what C Street was and when it was proposed, and issued me a ruling. I retained his services, paid him money to do this, and he issued me a ruling saying, you're good, C Street is completely gone. The title company also needed that, right, to issue their title.
Yeah.
So the good news, I think, I hope, is that we're not just now, I know it's very new information for you.
Right.
You just had the conversation today. It isn't the first time that the right people, the attorneys, the legal people have looked into this matter. I think he's pretty clear that C Street is nullified, shouldn't play into the application.
Sure. But, and please don't take this the wrong way, because this is nothing against you personally or anyone in particular. But regardless of any work that an applicant may do in preparation for an application, it's incumbent on the town to make sure that the town does its own work and not accept the work done by someone else as legitimate.
Matt,
That's not,
Sure.
that's not belittling any of the work that you've done, because you've shown great forethought in doing this, and thank you. But that doesn't mean that we also don't have to go through our own process.
Absolutely.
So,
Understood. And please know, none of this is me trying to circumvent anything.
Yeah,
I, as
absolutely.
the property
Yeah.
owner,
Yep.
I want it to be unimpeachable as well. So whatever needs to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there for it.
and that's, I spoke to Peter today. He explained it to me and I was like, all right, this makes sense. But like, I don't get to make the decision. So I asked him, can you write a letter or something formally so that it can be explained to all of you and it can go in a in the folder, and that way, good, great. Like, I'm not the person that he needs to convince. You're really not. It's like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's these four and one other person or George, it's like, there's only so many people you have to convince, and they're going to want, I would want something that says like, I read this and so I based my decision on that.
I think we're all on the same page. Yep. It's great. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
All right. No, thank you for the time, and I'll get you the information as soon as I can.
Very cool.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
All right. So that was public comments. We have no new business, no public hearings. Planner report. First one, do you have anything to report?
I'm here. I'm filling in
Present.
for Isabel.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
And I guess it came up before, and I just to be perfectly clear and kind of transparent. I work for the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. I was hired by Newcastle, or MCOG was hired by Newcastle several months ago originally to get the Newcastle comp plan approved by the state. So I came in, yeah, you're great doing that. And then since we already had this existing contract and we got that submitted in time, the comp plan submitted to the state, and Isabel's departure happened to coincide. It's like, basically, can you fill in here? And so that same contract that was in effect before so technically, it's not that I don't work for the town. It's just, I'm not like a municipal employee, still work for MCOG. It's like contractor, but so that's the situation. And it's the same thing in Damerscott as well. Generally the same thing. And yeah, and then I guess the only other thing I figured I would share with you is, I know we had discussed other work right before Isabel left, but some of this was included, like updating the shoreland zoning, looking at the sign ordinance, but I also now, basically Isabel gave me that list that I think all of you were part of creating. So that's my priorities list after I make sure that the planning board is running along. So that's essentially it. And I figured upcoming, possibly that Pleasant Street application will be on the agenda next week if it gets in, and I've got the next planning board meeting scheduled for April 20th.
Perfect.
So,
So, that's great. We'll know more, I guess, the select board is in, budget season at the moment, so that bears somewhat on the arrangement we have with MCOG.
Right.
How that is gonna unfold. Or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
And the contract's through, it's through whenever MCOG's, probably Newcastle's fiscal year ends as well, which is
End
in
of
the middle of the year, yeah.
Yeah.
June. So
Right.
through then anyway.
Yep. Okay.
Not stuff.
we got you that long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Seeing nothing? Motion to adjourn? All in favor? We are adjourned. Time is 7:29.